What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 4 with Malcolm.
Stoked to be here.
Dude, introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, my name's Malcolm, obviously. I work with Owen at New Life Church, and I'm one of the youth pastors here at this campus in Renton. And a lot of what I do is helping kind of creatively within our department. And so obviously my primary job is working with students, but a lot of that I think is through social media, through creativity, because I'm a creative, and I think that is the best way to reach this generation. So
Dude, you very much are creative, and I feel like you've really been picking that up in stride recently.
For sure. Yeah.
Like, you've gotten your hands on some better and more fleshed out software. I feel like that you can really create some stuff out. And you've just also just had more opportunities,
right,
in general. So, dude, what have you been doing recently? What you been up to? What you been grinding on?
Yeah, I think a couple things. First, obviously, is just what we're doing here with Next Gen. So a lot of stuff getting ready for our youth conference in the spring. We've been doing some shoots for that and just getting content ready. Obviously, we've kind of worked a little bit on that, getting ready to do some web stuff. And then just in addition to that, I've been working with Matt Harder with Lead Local and kind of designing that stuff as well, kind of honestly just figuring stuff out as I go a little bit, because I kind of just jumped into all this stuff creatively, and just some random side projects too. So just a lot of mainly Next Gen, Lead Local, and then random one-off projects, just kind of trying to get my feet wet in random avenues within kind of graphic design and video specifically.
New mediums, new forms of content.
Yeah, definitely.
Just trying to test the waters there.
Yeah.
Dude, I want to jump right in. The question I wanted to ask you, because you have to, I mean, your goal is to reach Gen Z.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
How do you market to Gen Z?
Yeah.
And also I feel like you have a lot to say about that, not only because you know, your users, your audience is them, but you have so much like interaction with them on a day-to-day basis. It's not just put it out and then we'll see, we'll get the numbers. It's like, no. Every single week you are interacting with the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. Oh, man, I think for me, obviously, well, my background even within, graphic design, video, social media is super, like you said, it's recent, honestly, really within the past year and a half, specifically. I feel like because my creative background has always mainly been in like music, and I've always been passionate about art.
You're a bass player, right?
Yeah, I play a little, slap the bass a little bit, So for me, like, I've always been into creativity, and I've always loved, like great visuals and graphics and videos and all that stuff. But I didn't really learn how to do that until really like a year and a half ago. And a lot of that kind of came from just a need that we had within the department of, hey, like we don't have someone creating this content. And so I kind of just jumped in, not really knowing, and learned a lot as I went, and am still learning a lot. And so kind of with that, being so new to it, I think every season I feel like I'm learning something new about how we can more effectively use the platforms and what we're doing to reach, obviously in our case, Gen Z specifically. And so a lot of that right now I feel is I'm really passionate about us creating content that's not just even just visually satisfying, but really trying to figure out how are we creating like valuable content.
Do you think that is the way to reach Gen Z? Because I think that from what I've seen, a lot of marketing perspectives is just to push really flashy content, like just as much attention grabbing, like, hey, that super short attention span. He's like, oh, they're all over TikTok, they're all over YouTube, just like really, really boil this thing down. But your thought is actually, let's create quality content that they can view and kind of chew on, and that's going to be the hook. It's really treating them as an intelligent end user. Right.
No, absolutely. And I think I'm so passionate about that, because the reality is like they are growing up, and really, in myself included, I mean, like I am kind of like the in between like millennial, Gen Z, and so a lot of this obviously is like our experience, but even like growing up and social media being such a big factor in like high school, and like those realities are true now for students as early as like late elementary school, know? And so they have access to all this content, I mean, if they want to know something, they're going to Google it, or they're going to follow the accounts that they're inspired by. And so they're they're not dumb. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that where I see a lot of marketing fall flat for Gen Z, also speaking a little bit from experience, as being like the person sometimes being marketed to, is I feel like it is visually really like it's awesome and it's stimulating, but it doesn't provide any value. And I think you can see through that now. And I think Gen Z specifically really is aware of that.
Because they've just, they've grown up in it, and like if you grow up within a system, you start to understand the nuances of it, and you can be like, oh, this is this is that, this is
Totally.
whatever. And also this is kind of recent, but that's why I think, some of the stuff like, the tree planting that Mr. Beast has been doing recently. He's a really popular philanthropist YouTuber. Right. Where he creates content kind of with some of those common marketing, either way, like how he talks or how he shows visuals or not. But the core of it, the message is super, super amazing and positive, and always been about like giving back. And that stuff just snaps off. It goes viral.
Well, and the reason for that is because, Gen Z and I've had a lot of conversations specifically with my boss, Matt Harder, who, like I said, we do lead local together with. But he's really passionate and has really studied kind of these avenues and how to more effectively reach Gen Z. And so having conversation with him, even like we're kind of coming to the realization that, the Gen Z, like the terminology around it is that they're publishers. They want to be involved in what's happening. You know what I mean? And so having flashy content isn't enough. It's not enough to just give them something that looks awesome, but they want to take it and they want to use it or be engaged with it and be a part of the conversation.
Because the novelty of the flashiness, I feel like, has really worn off in general. Like a lot of the novelties of the internet, I feel, have kind of gone down.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that these kids they know that they can make that stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a weird thing where it's like, even if you don't have the skill set, there's this kind of subconscious belief for Gen Z that through, whatever medium, whether it's just YouTube or following people I believe in, like I can figure out how to do anything.
They really see themselves as content producers. They really see themselves as like mini entrepreneurs. That specifically isn't been through some very weird, very, very anecdotal, but still, I think a very valid point that I've had with kids where they're like, hey, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about producing this type of content. What about merch, dude? Like, how are we branding this thing? Like, hey, can you give me $5 if I do this like skate trick? Like, I can't tell you how many more times I feel like I've been approached by a kid trying to sell me a product, even if it is like a literal plastic tray of dirt with some flowers in it. Like, there was a couple kids in my apartment complex who were like selling flowers. Yeah. And I was like, I know like the whole lemonade stand was kind of a very, very like, oh, do your lemonade stand as a kid? I feel like we never did that.
Right.
They are like all about that.
Well, and even more so, I mean, like today, the kid doesn't just have the lemonade stand, right? They have like a social media for their lemonade stand. Like they're doing a podcast about it. Like they're, what I mean? They're hitting all these avenues. And so there's so much more depth to the content they're creating. And they all just get excited about it. You see when like they rally around or they're excited about an idea that it really does like move forward, I think, in a way that things like that didn't in the past as much. And so I think kind of to go back to that original question, I think that content that can be engaged with is really the goal right now, trying to figure out what does that look like, the nuances, right? And testing things out and finding out what is, interesting to them. Some stuff, it falls flat and then you're like, okay, well, we're going to adjust the strategy. But that's really been a lot of what's excited me right now about creating, because it's more than just like delivering a great graphic or a cool video that's seen in a moment, but I'm like, how do we take this further, Yeah.
I think creating that depth and content, one is really hard. It's, that question is what's this next thing? Because it's exhausting to get that kind of content and to keep going. It's really easy, just like, oh, here's, cool animation, flashy thing. But then, the true message really just does fall flat. But I think that you're in a particular position, specifically because it all ties to church, that there always is a good core message that you can rely upon. Yeah. We say that like new life is at its best when it's like in the word, right? Right. Your message is going to be the best when it's truly rooted in the things that, you as an organization believe in. Totally. So it's almost like, it's great because I think every organization needs to figure this out, because if they're like, hey, we want to reach people and produce content, you have to have those like core concepts within your own business and brand that inform your decision making about the content that you're going to put out.
Yeah.
You know, like, because if you think about it, is if you have those core concepts, it doesn't matter what the subject is, if you're applying them, like, hey, we have a, you know, construction brand.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know, the construction is going to be interesting, but if your core concepts are, you know, environmentally friendly, timely, you know, like we are responsive to the consumer and what their needs are, if it's customizable, like, you know, those kind of small things go into the kind of content that you're producing, where like, hey, we want to show the process of this because we're very transparent about our process. I saw I randomly, I don't know how it came across my feed, but it was a stone and masonry kind of construction, and they would do a lot of kind of like patios and whatnot, but they had these amazing time lapse and progression photos. Like their video was really good.
Yeah.
It was really, really good and interesting. Like, I mean, we see a ton of these DIY channels on YouTube and, you know, like the machine press and like the hot knife stuff. But like, even if it's just taking some of like the really boring parts of infrastructure and, you know, like house building or, you know, renovating, like the time lapse. I mean, there's a reason why shows such as like the interior home decorating shows like do successful, but you break that down into like the bite size for social media, then you've got good content. You know, you could take that on anything that has a process that makes it, you can do something really cool with that.
Right.
Like anyone can create content like that. It's just about how are you thinking about it, how are you strategizing, and how are you breaking that down to be consumed. Right.
No, for sure. And I think that it is a unique kind of avenue or place that we're in with what we do because, you know, our organization or our company, if you will, you know, we're not really trying to push a product or a service. We're actually trying to, in a way, we're just trying to give something away, right? And we obviously believe that that's like the hope of the gospel through relationship with Jesus. And so it almost like flips everything on its head because it's like we're trying to get someone to almost take this gift, you know what I mean? And so I think our creative avenue should frame the reality that, you know, I believe that being a Christ follower and being a part of that community is the greatest thing we could ever experience. And I think that when our creativity kind of aligns with that and there's inspiration behind it and it's not just flashy, I think it points back to that truth, you know? And I think that that's been a huge lack in a lot of ways, at times with the church where we're like, you know, and not like the church is in like where we work, but I think the church holistically is there's kind of like, sometimes we're behind the curve of saying, well, maybe a fear of like, you know, conforming or whatever that might be. But I think that, you know, that's why, like you're saying, we have to have that foundation. We need to know, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? The foundation obviously is to reach people for Jesus, to give them this gift. But I think with that being said, if you have established that and you can know that you're moving forward with that being the purpose, then we should tap into what is, what's working in the culture right now, you know, and social media platforms, you know. And
does that mean playing Kanye for everything right now,
though? I'm not gonna say
maybe.
No.
Yes, no.
Is it the entire playlist right now? It might be.
Maybe.
Will it be on all of the promo videos? Most likely.
Did Vu Church quote it in a sermon within 12 hours of it being released? Maybe.
Not gonna be surprised if that did happen.
I'm pretty sure it did. I think I saw something.
Was that the walkout song for us this week? It was.
Maybe.
I cannot confirm nor deny.
No.
But the answer is yes.
Don't know if I'll buy that merch though. A little on the pricey.
The merch is pretty pricey.
Yeah. Look, he charges the prices that he charges.
Yeah, you know.
That's what he says.
He's living his life, you know. If I could get someone to pay $60 for a T-shirt I designed, then I would absolutely be doing that.
Did you watch that Apple interview that he did?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Really interesting. I think you should go listen to it. Specifically as a creative. It's really, really good. He has some interesting points on like manufacturing and bringing business back to the U.S., which I'm like, go you. You know, be a pioneer for, you know, startups, founders, CEOs, all that. Yeah. Dude, random thought. And this is kind of coming from my experience as a designer. And I feel like a lot of people who are young in their design career can understand it. The first couple years of you doing anything internally, it feels like crap. Like when you go back and look at it.
Oh, for sure.
Listen to where I'm going. I'm not saying this is your time, but do you feel like you're ironing out a lot of things and you're kind of like, all right, I need to just work at this, or I need to figure out how to mood board better. I need to figure out what's my style. How am I providing answers to these creative problems?
Yeah.
Like how are you working out those kind of big picture questions in your head? Because you said you're so early on in this thing.
For sure. No, I think that, man, as a creative, I think whatever I do, for me personally, like I want to look, 6 months back, a year back, and be like, man, like that was a really terrible thing. And not because it was terrible, like for the time, but I think because then I feel like I've grown and learned new things. And I feel like if I looked at something I made a year ago and I was like, man, like
that's the best thing ever.
Yeah, I'd be pretty bummed out, I think, because it's like I've really then probably plateaued in my ability to create. And I think that there's stuff that,
you totally can say that, oh, wow, I knocked it out of the park there.
Right.
But
yeah. And I think there's factors too. It's like, man, like for the time, for what we were doing, for the look that was in, it all worked. And so I think that there's things like I look back on and like I have pride for, but there's also a lot of it that I was like, man, that was so bad, and so I think that, I think I am definitely in that situation where it's like, I've only really been creating in this avenue with like graphics and visuals for the past year and a half, 2 years. And then like really like video too has been in like the past like 2-3 months. And so if you
can knock video out of the park, even in just the smallest avenues, it brings so much dynamic content to the table.
And I think that's why like I felt the need where I was like, man, I need to learn how to kind of figure this out a little bit. Because I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, people engage with video content so much more than visual content. It's ridiculous. And so having like visual content's important, but that video content's everything. And that's why you see like, you're talking about like Gary Vee earlier before we started this, and how like he was kind of like an inspiration for you in what we're doing here. But the reality 100%. Is like what he does is so like minimal. You know what I mean? Like it's not like flashy production. It's not like super.
I feel like half the visuals that go on his videos are whatever platform he's on, the captions,
right,
or the emoji, or whatever.
No, totally. And so it's like he's not like, he's not creating like visual art, but his content's like some of the most consumed content out there right now, and it's because it's the message, it's what he's producing, and not so much like the look. And there is like a balance, right? Because there's kind of like that uncanny valley of where it's like, if it's really crappy, it's like it's awesome, and if it's really awesome, it's awesome. But if it's like trying to be awesome and it's crappy, then it's terrible.
It falls flat. I think he has a great line that is quality is subjective, and I think that holds really true. I actually think for me in this show, it's kind of been, I have to have my visuals on point, because if no designer is going to listen to a podcast that looks crappy, right? Because for me, it's a necessity because of who I'm trying to reach and
totally,
talk to.
It's your audience,
but it doesn't have to be some kind of crazy robust thing. Yeah, like I kept it pretty simple. Like I was more concerned about pushing out more content, because I knew that was going to be the pitfall for me. Right, was if I don't do something every week, that 1 week's going to turn into 2 weeks, turn into 3 weeks. Totally. If I'm pushing out content like daily, which I really, really try to do, the only way that I'm going to do that on my own is by having a system, having a brand system that I just plug in and go, drop a name into, drop a video, audio file into, and we just hit export. Done. Turning that into a really functioning, just a little machine that just in goes the raw footage and out comes the nice polished finished thing, and then bam, we've got our stuff to post, and then the rest of it just becomes like, hey, what's next week? Yeah, because I feel like I film these things really quick from when I decide what's going to happen. Sure. Just because the pace has to be kind of quick, and I'm kind of like, I'm just kind of gambling and hoping that whoever I call on next is just going to be good to go. Yeah. But I do think it's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Man, and I think too, like with that, you're talking about that idea of like putting out content daily, and how like, I think it doesn't even take a lot of like study within like marketing or like digital marketing, social media, to know that like consistency of content and like video content, like you can figure out pretty quick like what avenues work. You know what I mean? But I think for me, like the challenge with that is like realizing that we need to put out this amount of content, and it needs to be this consistent and this engaging. And like the hardest thing for me, I'd say, is like a creative right now is when you have to like create and you're not inspired, you know what I mean? Where it's like, the need's there, so you have to do it, but you don't have like an inspiration for that project or that effort, and you're just like doing it because it needs to be done.
Dude, it's really just about showing up.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to be inspired. Not everything is going to be rooted, and you're like, wow, like I'm really about this. But honestly, everyone gets there. You just got to show up. You just got to go. You got to show up. You got to grind. You got to. If it accomplishes what you're trying to do, bam, done.
Right.
I think that honestly that was such a pitfall for me in college, where I was like, it doesn't look this way.
Sure.
But I would miss the entire point of what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And I might end up with this really, really cool looking thing, but you can tell that I tried to exercise an extreme amount of control over it. And I didn't just like let it breathe and be and kind of form into the thing that it needs to.
Yeah.
Because I was so focused on what I wanted out of this project or this thing that, function just wasn't there, or who it was supposed to reach didn't really line up with how it looked.
Yeah.
And so in a vacuum, cool, great, awesome. But if it's practically applied and falls flat, then it's worthless. It means nothing then at that point.
Totally. No, for sure. And I think that goes back to even what we were saying earlier, where it's like it can be the most visually stimulating thing. It can look so awesome, but if it misses the point of what it's there to do, then it's like, man, the wasted effort, And I feel like for me, it's like I struggle because with creativity in the sense of like, it's like, you want to feel it and I think every creative like wants to feel what they're doing, and they want to have their heart bought into it. But then it's like, for me, like I love, when I've established kind of like a brand or a direction and I'm creating, but I'm also kind of like, I'm also kind of like impatient with it, where it's like, then after I've created and it's been like, we've locked something in, it's been a week, we've been creating, and I'm like, oh, I'm over this,
Yeah. What do you want to learn? Like specifically within design, us coming from two different very places where you're in the deep of it now, and you're creating, and you actually have an audience, and you can go measure that, and you have really good feedback. Versus, and you're learning this on your own. Versus, I had a little bit of an education and whatnot. Like there's like different things that I want to learn now that were informed by this experience I had earlier, where I'm like, wow, I completely whiffed on this whole other thing.
Yeah.
But then you're living this out in real time, and I'm sure there's some theoretical things that you want to learn about.
Yeah.
What's that thing right now that you're like, wow, I would love to learn about this thing?
I think in the sense of like strategy, I really want to learn, like we were saying, I want to learn how to create that kind of like magic content, like that reaches the audience I'm trying to reach, and like and is extremely engaging. Like I feel like we kind of hit the mark, or we meet the mark in a moment with one effort, and then it's like we fall flat again. And so trying to find
creating the system.
Yeah, totally. The system I think is like on like the theoretical side, and then like on the kind of the more artistic side, I just want to learn how to like more effectively use these different platforms. You know what I mean? Because like for me, like
really get into like the guts and gears of like like the hashtags, the function, or the
no, absolutely. And I think that like, because I mean, there's always going to be moments where you see someone create something or do something, you're like, man, I want to figure out how to do that one function or that one thing. But I think in like a broader perspective for me is like, I want to figure out how to just use and master these tools so that like I can make kind of a vision a reality creatively. And I think that that's like something that's kind of like my roadblock right now, is like, there's moments where I'm like, this thing would be incredible, but I have no idea. You kind of have the garage full of tools, but you're not exactly sure how to apply which one. Totally.
All right, I want to get really specific.
Yeah.
What's your main kind of platform right now? Like what's your platform's not the right word. What's your main software for creating stuff?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, like
you just got into Adobe Creative Cloud.
Right. Recently. Yeah. So okay. So I've only been doing it for like a year and a half. Just got into, Adobe and everything, and like designing like on a computer, like literally a week and a half ago. And so like for me, it's so fresh, but I've been creating content mobily for like a year and a half.
Just on your phone.
Yeah. So everything I've been doing has been on my phone, on my, iPhone, shameless plug, not the new one. So sad. But no, I've been creating everything on my phone for the past year and a half. And dude, just learned so much about like, how to do these random things, you know, and like I'm like, oh, like this app can do this one little function. And I think like that's where it kind of came out of a frustration through the fact that I use like 12 apps to create one thing. And like, you know what I mean? I'm like, first of all,
well, you showed me Canva and I was like, okay, so that's just the layering feature in this other thing. And then you go into like filters for this whole other bit.
Like 10 filters or 10 like products and apps all working together make like this one effort that could all have been done on.
Well, I'm glad you're already in that synergy mindset, because there's quite a bit of that between the Adobe stuff. Mostly just like for you, it's probably just going to be Adobe or Illustrator to Photoshop.
Yeah.
For most stuff. Are there any features where you're like, wow, I really want to know how to learn? Like I want to get real specific. Like really specific. Like, dude, the warp tool. I don't even know.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, I'm like, I want to figure out how to warp text. I want to get also like for me getting in Adobe was like, I want to start buying like specific fonts that I want to use. You know what I mean?
Dude. All right, this is the biggest trap. Don't buy fonts.
Don't do it.
Every single one of those fonts that you can buy, there is a free alternative that works equally as well.
Well, see, I think like for me,
I have something I need to show you for that.
Dude, okay,
specifically typography-wise.
Yeah, because I feel like for me, I'm like I'm pulling fonts and downloading them into my phone, but like because of the interfaces or whatever the apps I'm using, like there's certain fonts like just aren't able to go in, and I'm just like frustrated because I'm like like I wanted to use this thing, you know.
We need to sit down and workshop this, because I feel like I'm like I'm gonna show you something now,
because it's just like all those little things, right? Like like I've been using, the primary app I use is this app called Over, and it's kind of like the layering features and like a lot of like what you would do in Photoshop, but like on training wheels. You know what I mean? And like I will say, even I think as I get more into using Photoshop or Adobe Suite, like the reality is I think I'm still going to do some creating on the phone, just because the kind of practical benefit of being able to pump something out so quick wherever I'm at. I think that'll always be,
it's really good.
Oh, for sure. Especially like if you're making something quick for social media or something pops up and you don't have time to like get into it with, sit down and open up a computer.
Dude, if Adobe was on the iPad,
it should be a game changer.
Adobe, what are you doing? You need to get on the mobile app game. Like, I know you've got Lightroom, but come on, man. We need a Photoshop for iPad. We need an Illustrator for iPad. Make it happen.
Listen up. Man. We'll sponsor you on this podcast.
We'll sponsor you. We'll need to just promote it.
Well, yeah.
I met some of y'all once. I remember it was like my first internship. It was before Adobe XD got released, which is kind of their UX UI prototyping software. Okay. They came in and interviewed a bunch of people at the firm I was working for, and it was really interesting.
Are they like based in this area?
They do. They do actually. They do have offices up in Ballard, I think. Oh. Because you can go up there and get certified in some of their software. Like they offer like little classes and whatnot.
Oh,
it's
really?
Pretty cool. If they weren't so far away, I'd go take more of it.
That's far. That's far.
Ballard is far from where we're at. Is southeast of Seattle.
Yeah.
Do we have the rights to call ourselves Seattleites? I don't know.
I think when I talk to someone that's not from the state, I just tell them I live in Seattle.
We're close enough.
Because like when you talk to someone that's from out of state and they tell you they live in a major city, like 90% of the time they live 40 minutes away from that city. Yeah. And we only live like 25 minutes away from Seattle. So,
it's just, I guess Seattle has such a huge impact on our day-to-day that we can call ourselves that.
I feel like if you go into Seattle enough, you know what I mean? Like you have to go into Seattle.
I can't be bothered to go in anymore. I really can't. Other than a decent bite to eat, of which I can probably get in Bellevue.
See, I love it because it's just like so. I think again, like as a creative, like I love just the grittiness of it. You know what I mean? And like the diversity. Like I love Bellevue because it's like really clean and like a nice city, but it's just, to me, it feels kind of stale because it's so.
Very true. Totally fair.
But
I think I'm just burnt out because my very first job out of college was like a fat commute into downtown Seattle. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take a pause on this and enjoy like something else.
Right.
Like, being able to drive like 8 minutes to work.
Yeah.
With the gym being on the way to work.
That's
pretty nice.
It really is. You can't beat not having a commute.
Short commute, dude. After a long commute where it was like 2.5 hours daily. I took a bus to get to the train and then took another bus.
Yeah.
and the fact that I like the train only came home at certain times, so I was like, gotta be home by this time. Can't stay and enjoy a Sounders game after work because I'm just toast afterwards.
Did you ever sleep on the bus?
No, because it's like both bus rides were so short that if I like actually slept, I'd probably miss my stop.
Oh, okay.
The train ride maybe, because it was just one stop to one stop, but it was like the train ride is like 15 minutes.
See, when I was in high school, I used to take a bus to a community college, and like, man, I would sleep on the thing all the time. I don't know. I just held my backpack, and I was like,
I slept on the bus in college when I was doing an internship. Like that was a fat bus ride.
Yeah.
Or the light rail. I'll sleep on the light rail.
Yeah. You got to do it, man.
It's chill. Dude, thanks so much for coming on. We really knocked that one out. It was a lot of fun. Thanks, dude.
It's been a pleasure, man.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for
soft hands. Thank y'all for tuning in. Catch y'all next time.